Welcome back to Temperature Check. I'm your host, Nili Gilbert. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome His Excellency Majid Al Suwaidi. A lot of our viewers know that I'm really passionate about the role of finance in helping to address the climate challenge and unlock the huge potential in the transition ahead. But to do this, we'll need to innovate our ways of moving capital through the system. This requires new structures and also leaders who change the narrative around the investment opportunities and how to capture them. Ambassador Majid, as the CEO of ALTÉRRA, the world's largest private climate investment fund, is absolutely on the vanguard of this field. ALTÉRRA was launched by the United Arab Emirates with an initial commitment of $30 billion in a show of the country's conviction of the need and opportunity in financing climate transition globally. Another reason I'm so looking forward to this conversation is because of the perspective and skill that Ambassador Majid's broader career experience brings to this new initiative. He previously served as the Director General of COP28 during the UAE's presidency of the global climate negotiations last year, and also previously was an ambassador and consul general for the Emirates, serving from New York to Madrid, and as the UAE's lead negotiator on climate change in the process that led to the Paris Agreement. A recurring theme here on Temperature Check is the multilateral effort required to truly move ahead in the next leg of the climate race, with governments, private finance, corporations, philanthropy, multilateral development banks, and communities finding paths to work together when they've too often worked in silos. That vision is a backbone for this show. So, Ambassador Majid, as a business leader, diplomat, and a friend with such expansive range of perspectives to share, I'm sure that you will bring great wisdom to our conversation today. Welcome.
Neely, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you, and I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me too. And congratulations on reaching the 1 year anniversary of the launch of ALTÉRRA. I
I
remember
know.
being with you at COP28 in Dubai when you launched it, and you and your team have been really busy deepening into execution throughout the course of this past year. To kick off, I thought it would be interesting if you were willing to reflect a little bit back on the vision leading up to the launch, and then, of course, to hear about your focus since then.
Well, thank you. I mean, you're exactly right. It hardly feels like a year since we hosted COP28 so successfully, and the team and I were, along with our COP president, Dr. Sultan, exhausted after hosting such a COP, but we didn't have any time to rest, and me and my colleagues set to work right away, almost immediately, to get ALTÉRRA up and running because we were announced by our president at the COP as really the UAE's contribution to the many challenges that we face in climate change, but namely, how do we mobilize capital, particularly to the global south? And that's where ALTÉRRA is really born from. And, we've worked really in earnest over the course of this year to get the organization up and running and all those good things like having employees and having an office and having, getting the agreements made with our partners. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about that in a bit more detail. But I feel really excited about where we are today. 1 year on, we've made tremendous strides. We are really, I think, well ahead of where I thought we would be at the end of COP28. And I think that today we feel really excited about ALTÉRRA and where it's going, and really excited about the partnerships that we've made over the course of this year. And I'm really excited to tell you about them.
I'm so happy that you brought up also the original inspiration of thinking about how to move capital to the global south. As you know, in the last years, climate finance trends have been positive, actually surging past $1 trillion in total flows. but we still see a really massive gap in capital that's going to emerging and developing economies. And these countries account for 2/3 of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, while also making up the majority of vulnerable climate hotspots. So moving capital here has really remained one of the biggest challenges that we face in achieving our overarching global goals. And we're often reminded of the crucial role of private capital partnering with public funds to deliver the scale of financing that's needed. Would you be willing to tell us more about ALTÉRRA's approach here? And I wonder if there are any recent examples that you could highlight to help bring this to life.
Yeah, well, Nili, I mean, you really put the nail on the head. It's that we know that unfortunately today, climate finance just isn't flowing to the global south the way we want it to. Right? Roughly 80% is being invested today in the developed world, and we know that we need to flip that for exactly the reasons you talked about, where 2/3 of global emissions are coming from the developing world, and that's only going to grow as those economies grow. So we need to tackle it there. I think if I could step back and start at where we started as hosts for COP28, I was Director General for COP. I was working beside our COP President, Sultan Al Jaber. And, we hosted COP because as the UAE, we've had a long history of being involved in climate change. Our leadership has been very dedicated to addressing the challenge of climate change, both at home and working with international partners to try to tackle this very important issue. And our president, the president of the UAE, really wanted that we were contributing across the board to solutions. And when we started, we wanted to understand what the challenge was. And we knew that we had this global stocktake. We knew that we were off track for achieving 1.5 degrees. And so Dr. Sultan and I, Dr. Sultan, by the way, today is our chairman at ALTÉRRA, and so really one of our guiding leaders. We traveled around the world, and I think we went to more than 100 countries. And everywhere we went, what we heard time and time again was that there were, many issues and many barriers, but at the core of it was really this issue of finance and how do we mobilize finance. And we would hear two things. We would hear from the finance community, oh, well, there was lots of capital, but there are no projects to invest in. And then we would hear on the flip side that there were lots of projects and investments, but there was no capital to go behind it. So we knew that there was some kind of mismatch in what we were hearing between these two things. And then we also were hearing from a lot of our really great financial experts and colleagues, and yourself, that you were involved in many of those conversations with us, that we needed to have a reform of the international financial architecture, that we needed to have a transformation of how the MDBs and the IFIs work, and the international financial institutions. And when we looked at how we as the UAE could make a contribution, how our president could make a contribution, we realized we couldn't solve everything. There was no silver bullet here that would solve all the climate finance issues, but what could we contribute that would really make a difference? So we felt that, well, we could either recreate some more concessional capital, which we felt was already there. So here in the UAE, we have Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, there's the World Bank, there's IFC, there's many other agencies globally that are providing concessional or grant-based capital. So we didn't think that that was purely the solution. We knew that the purely commercial private sector was there, saying that they wanted to invest. But there wasn't really something that sat in the middle that would sort of catalyze or get that flywheel going. And Dr. Sultan, under the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, our president, who for 20 years really has been a pioneer, especially when it comes to the renewable energy space. He, with Dr. Sultan, helped launched Masdar, our renewable energy company. And they've been investing in the global south for years, working with grant capital from Abu Dhabi Fund for Development and other private finance. And Masdar doing the project development, they've been able to deliver many projects in the global south today, so much so that Mustard is one of the largest renewable energy providers globally. And so what we thought was, what can we do to take that model and really scale it up? How can we put it on steroids, if you will? And that's where the idea of creating ALTÉRRA came from. How could we create something that sat between these two end members of the financial spectrum, but brought them together? And that's where we came up with this catalytic fund. And our president really was the one who said we wanted to come big with a 30 billion fund. And this is really, one of the most exciting things is about the scale of ALTÉRRA, the scale that we provide. So it's a clear message from the UAE and from UAE leadership that the UAE is putting its money where its mouth is. Alongside the many other investments we make when it comes to renewables and other types of investment in the global south. And then we gave it this unique structure so that it was made up of these two funds. One was a 25 billion fund that we call Acceleration. It's a catalytic fund. It's bringing that scale to the market and saying, hey, we want to work with you, to partner with you, to deploy capital across the board anywhere in the world. And then clearly saying, but hey, we're going to dedicate 5 billion only for the global south. And that's where we have our transformation fund that is really focused on how to deliver capital there in the global south. And we've also set a target of mobilizing 250 billion by 2030. So with that, we created scale, we created structure, and we gave it a scope of being global. And I think that that's what makes ALTÉRRA really exciting. And to date, I feel proud that we have not only announced this at COP28, but we committed that we would deploy 6.5 billion of that capital with 3 partners. And we did that because we wanted to say, hey, we're not just making a pledge here, we're actually serious about this and we're actually going to do it. And our 3 partners, and we'll have more to come, but the 3 initial partners were Brookfield, BlackRock, and TPG. And with them, we've invested across 7 strategies. But what I'm most excited about is that we've created 3 global south focused funds. One with BlackRock, where we are reinvigorating an existing strategy that they had. With Brookfield and TPG, we've created brand new funds, which we've seeded and they've gone out to raise against. And I'll tell you today, Nili, they are far exceeding our expectations of how much capital they'll be able to raise, which just goes to show the appetite there is out there for a vehicle that would allow investors to invest in the global south and to invest in climate. And I think that that's how we've already been successful in disrupting the market. We've already been successful in raising capital. And now we need to take that next step to ensuring that we are deploying capital on the ground and particularly in the global south.
It's amazing, really, to hear the origin of the vision, but to see it coming into the market and already having some of the impact that you envisioned. For example, the innovative fund structure that you created that makes a really meaningful commitment to start, but is designed to stimulate other institutional capital to come in, is an example of a innovation in structure that drives impact, but I think also by demonstrating to people what's possible. And I'm so happy that you brought that up because I've been thinking a lot lately about how, in addition to everything else that we need to do to mobilize climate finance, one of the things that is required is just for traditional investors to build more familiarity and gain comfort with the emerging field. And I think that that's what your structure is doing. In my wanderings, I find that some investors are risk averse just because this is a field that they haven't engaged in yet. And so we talk about managing risks. Some aspect of that is just behavioral and informational.
Hmm.
Um, and so your approach is inviting investors to rethink and refine their perspectives by joining you in their leadership. And a big part of what you've done by having the two arms is demonstrate that climate investing doesn't have to be just concessionary or philanthropic, that there is a place when it's done well that climate investments can deliver competitive returns compared with other market equivalents. I wonder how you think about that aspect of it, the bridge from concessionary finance into traditional investments, and how has your team been going about starting to prove that out?
Yeah, that's so important, such an important point, Nelly. When we were meeting with governments, we met all sorts of different governments, different agencies, different investors, the private sector. And we know that today that we need to mobilize about 9 trillion globally in investment. And so that's around the world, but we need at least about 2.4 trillion in the global south of private sector capital to or capital in general, just invested. So, what could we do to be part of that? And when we looked at the challenges, exactly like you said, what we felt was that some of the challenges were real when you think about foreign exchange risk or political risk, but many of them were sometimes perceived risk
Mhm.
or a lack of information or a lack of track record or a lack of history. And as a country from the global south, of the global south, we're
Mm.
very blessed that we've been able to develop our economy and we've worked really hard to diversify and move away from our traditional sources of income to new forms of income. And we've invested in the global south for many, many years. I mentioned earlier
Mhm.
about us taking a model that we had and really like trying to soup that up. And so we feel very comfortable investing in the global south. So what we felt was that, how can we bring along other partners with us? And we brought together all the bright financial minds we had here in the UAE. And we were
Mm.
very lucky to have a lot of partners within the financial community who do a lot of business with us. We brought them together as well. We held a lot of workshops internally over the course of the year to try to figure out, well, what is that design that would really make sense? And I think what we landed on was that the simpler we made it, the better.
Hmm.
And we will of course innovate in time, but when we started out, the investment community, our investors, our financial professionals who were working with us, were saying, if you really want to do this, you've got to make it really simple. You've got to make it easy for other investors to grasp. And that's where we have different examples, slightly different ways that we do it with different partners. But one example is what we've done with TPGs, where we've used what we call our FICO model or our first in capped out model. That's where we seed the fund with capital that is still commercial. It's not fully concessional, but we give a little bit of upside to attract other investors to come in. And the goal that we have is that by bringing in the other investors, we can create a fund that's of scale. That's a private equity fund, and now TPG has to go out. And then that will then
Mhm.
create the investments. We can do co-investments alongside that fund. So we'll be able to double down where we see that we feel an investment really makes sense and could really make a difference. And the other investors, of course, will have that same opportunity. But what we hope is that that starts to break down some of those risks or those barriers that would prevent traditional investors from coming and investing in the global south. And look, are we trying to solve all the problems of finance in the world? No. What we're trying to do, and we've been very clear about this from the beginning, is achieve scale and achieve real meaningful impact. We kind of see that we have a dual mandate. One mandate is to show real climate impact that we're making a difference when it comes to addressing climate change. We want to see emissions reductions. We want to see investments at scale in the solutions that are going to move the needle and help us to keep on track for keeping global temperatures under 1.5 degrees. But at the same time, we need to show commercial returns because, Nili, I think you know, and all of us know very well instinctively, not only practically, that the only way we're really going to see capital mobilized at scale into climate, not only in the global south, but also in the developed world, because remember, these challenges also exist in the developed world, is if people see that there's a commercial return to it. And institutional investors, by the way, have fiduciary responsibilities to their investors and their clients, right? And so we should expect that they expect that, right? So we need to be helping them. And what I would like to see us doing, and you ask, how do we think about this going forward, is we're going to learn from this process with these partners of these simple models. And then what I would like to see is how we can innovate on that. And as our team, what I think is going to be very powerful and unique when it comes to ALTÉRRA is that we will be able to see from the results of this effort, we will be getting that data coming back in, and we'll be able to learn and innovate and create solutions with other partners, hopefully. And I would love to see how we can collaborate with other forms of capital, institutional or the MDBs or even concessionary capital to create solutions as we go into more challenging environments or more challenging markets and create solutions that can help us to really see the scale we want to see. So that's why, we don't do a lot of venture. We will do some. We're not looking to do showpiece projects. We really want to be investing in solutions that will make a difference to the countries where we're investing, will help them grow their economy, will help them leapfrog into that clean energy future we want. So that's why, for me, the vision of ALTÉRRA is not just about climate investing. It's what was at the heart of COP28, is how can we have a conversation with the public, the investment community, about climate change in a practical sense that didn't sort of ignore their fears or concerns, that it was practical, but that we could show them that there's a real opportunity here, that this is if you want to think about it, a $9 trillion economic opportunity, if that's what we need to invest, and that we're investing in the future economy that we want to be invested in, and that is a good thing. And we're having a conversation about what we're giving people, what we're giving global South countries, what we're giving, global North countries, rather than the sacrifices we're asking people to make. And that's what I think is really exciting about ALTÉRRA.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot that's really exciting in that. I so appreciate that you took some time to share your perspectives on impact, because one thing that I've always noticed about you as a leader is that, on the one hand, you always remind us about the focus on human lives, on the focus on creating and expanding prosperity. We've talked a lot about nature and biodiversity, but I think you're right when we talk about the opportunity to demonstrate attractive commercial returns in this space. Perhaps counterintuitively, I think when it comes to climate finance, there's an additional kind of impact in that, because that's what is required to get the capital that we need at scale. We talk about this all the time at Carbon Direct Capital. It's actually one of our visions for how we have impact as a company. And then, of course, if we get this right, we stave off the downside systemic risk that climate presents to GDP and to every asset class. And then on the topic of thinking about partnering with different kinds of capital along the way, of course, I have to congratulate you on the recent announcement with Rockefeller Foundation. I wanted to see if you could share with us a little bit more about that. This seems like a huge opportunity to deepen that impact and also to do what you were saying about really thinking about uh, partnering with diverse actors to be able to achieve these goals.
Yeah. Well, Nili, first of all, thank you so much for bringing that human aspect to our conversation, which I always love about you. And I think that, I care about that a lot. It's very important for us that ALTÉRRA has integrity in everything that it does. And that's where we really work hard. And I have a great team of people. We've created a climate impact framework that gives us guidance to how we're deploying our capital, making sure, and we did a benchmarking across, a global benchmark to try to see how we can create some sort of standards. Of course, it's very difficult because it's a very moving landscape and often diverse landscape. And
Yes.
especially as you look to different regions or different countries, it can be very complicated. And we're probably not going to get it right from day one, but it's always at the heart of everything that we think about on a day-to-day basis, that we make sure that we do everything we can to have integrity, to make sure that we are fundamentally addressing the challenge of climate change and reducing emissions, and hopefully in doing so, improving people's lives. Why do I say that as so important to what we do? Because we are a legacy of COP28, because we were launched by our president, we we are really reflecting the years of leadership that we've had in the UAE and the fantastic journey that our country has been on. A lot of people think today of the modern UAE. I'm not a very old person, but also not super young. But I've seen the real transformation of our country under our country's leadership. And I've also been part of the process of them bringing climate change and sustainable development into the model of our development story, our development journey. We also have been able to use the climate change and sustainable development principles, because they really came from our founding story, to diversify our economy and make us more resilient and more robust. And that has generated new jobs, clean jobs for people, new opportunities for young people, investment in sectors that have allowed new aspects of our economy to develop and grow, and has also made us more efficient, better in how we use water, better in how we use energy, better in how we produce things. And those are all good things for our economy. They've all been really, I think, a good aspect to our development. And that's why I get excited, and why we in the UAE get excited about these investments, is because we think that they make economic sense. They make economic sense for developing countries to help lift people out of poverty. If we're providing energy to a poor family in Africa or Asia or Latin America, and that allows their kids to study at night, we know these stories, and we know that at the heart of it, they make a difference to people's lives. Then that is not only good for humanity, it can also make economic sense for the economy where we're making an investment, and hopefully should make economic sense for the investor as well. And when we do it in that way, which has been our journey in the UAE, has been our development story, we think that really makes a difference. You mentioned our partnership with Rockefeller. We're an organization at ALTÉRRA that is of scale. We are a fund of funds, so we will largely be a fund of funds as we develop and grow as an organization, working with large fund managers who help deal with our capital. But what we knew from the very beginning, and that's why we started very early, is that we don't just want to be an organization that deploys capital. We want to be an organization that is creating innovation, developing new ideas, thinking about how we move not just us, but other institutions to investing in the global south. And of course, we know that this is not easy, that this is difficult. I don't think for a minute that this is going to be not a challenging problem. The whole reason we exist is because no one else is doing this. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And so we want as many partners to be working with us. And Rockefeller and GIAP stepped up and said, hey, we'd love to partner with you to think about how we create solutions going forward. And I think that that's what's exciting about the work. Our teams are working together, making sure that we're sharing knowledge, sharing experience, thinking about the problems at different scales. Of course, Rockefeller can do things in different markets at different scales than we can, as ALTÉRRA can do. We perhaps work in different in different spaces. But I think that there's a lot of possibility for us to collaborate. And what I would love to see is that we find those ideas and solutions where we could collaborate, as you said, to tackle some difficult challenges or difficult investment environments. And by the way, we're talking to a lot of other partners, institutional partners, who we hope would also join in with us to try to create blended solutions, blended finance solutions that we can deploy in challenging environments, to really see investment at scale and really see us turning the tables and seeing the mobilization of capital to the global south, but also, hey, expanding the investment that we see in the north today.
Congratulations again on this. I think one thing that you highlighted is just the unique skill sets that the two institutions bring to the table. And this is back to that theme of how, by bringing together diverse actors, although there's a skill in being able to do that and make it work, that we can solve challenges and unlock opportunities that we would never be able to do just working in silos. And this is such a good example of that. And I was also smiling when you shared a little bit about your perspective on the UAE's unique history and journey. As you know, I've had the chance to spend a lot of time in the country and getting to know the national history and character and vision. I was there around the time of your 50-year celebrations. And it's amazing when you think about all of the growth and expansion and development that the UAE itself has delivered in this period of time, right? Sometimes I think that is what gives the country a can-do attitude about being able to rise into the next phase. You've already been doing it. And I also am really interested in the diplomatic position of the country. Just very good international relations with a diverse set of actors. From the US to China, you mentioned your deep partnerships and in relationships in the global South at a time when being able to build those bridges is so important. I wonder, how do you see the national strategy, also given your role for a long time representing the country as a diplomat, Matt, how do you see the national strategy playing out? It seems to me that in this modern environment, the UAE really is uniquely positioned because of its history and character to be able to make a difference on climate and other global challenges.
Yeah, Nelly, we're a very young country. I mean, today we provide one type of energy, but we want to be part of providing the energy system of the future. And I think that the vision that they had to do that when others weren't, and the bravery they had to do that when others weren't, is really significant. And I think that it's one of the great things about being a diplomat for the UAE is that I feel that, we have gone on this journey and some of the lessons that we've learned could be useful for others, and others can take from it what they will. But for us, this is something that's been really key to our development story, is a concern for nature, concern for the environment, concern for sustainable development and growth, ensuring that we're lifting our people out of poverty and everybody else who comes to be part of the UAE's growth story. And I think that you see that today when you come and visit the UAE. I think that that's where we're pretty unique. And And in that sense, if I come back to where we started, we're still at heart traders, right? We're still people who know how to work with the global south. We work with anybody. We're a very global community here in the UAE. And I think that that lends us well to understanding that you have to partner with people. You have to partner with anybody who wants to join forces with you to tackle hard challenges. And I think that that's the only way, frankly, we're going to really tackle this global challenge of climate change, address these real barriers that are real and do exist, is if we join forces and pool our resources and pool our great minds and our capital and really tackle this head on. And by the way, that can be good for the global community, but it can also be good for investors, and it will be good for everybody. As a country that is in an arid environment, an environment will be one of the first to be impacted by climate change. And our leadership recognizes that. And so that's why we wanted to host COP28. That's why we have a long tradition of being involved in this issue. And that's why we launched ALTÉRRA, to really try to make a difference. And that's what we in the organization here think about every day, is how we can move the needle when it comes to addressing these challenges.
I appreciate this so much. And I'd heard about the pearl trading, but I never put it into this bigger picture of thinking about how that shapes the national leadership today, looking into the future, the willingness, eagerness always to innovate and be able to pivot. And I certainly never knew the story about your grandfather, which is really cool. Um, my favorite place in the UAE is Saadiyat Beach, I have to tell you, in Abu Dhabi. But my second favorite place is the Museum of the Future in
Mm-hmm.
Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
Have you taken the tour there?
I have, and I think that that's really reflective of how the UAE thinks, and why I said that I kind of see ALTÉRRA not just as a climate fund, but a fund that is investing in the future. And I think
Yes.
that that's really key, Nili, to what we want people to understand, is that I think so often we think of climate investing or as this sort of is charity or something like that. But it's really exciting. It's really about how we're investing in new materials, how we're investing in new science, in new technology, in new solutions that will be more efficient, more intelligent, use our resources more wisely, and be more in tune with our natural world. And I think that that is super cool. I think that this is something that young people get excited about.
Yes.
And when you go to the Museum of the Future, I hope you've taken your kids there. It's really setting that vision of what a future could look like, right? And I think that that's what we think about here at ALTÉRRA, is how can we be part of investing in the future? How can we be part of finding those, generating and pushing those new ideas that help us and others to grow and develop into that clean future that we all want to see.
Exactly. There's so much in the climate challenge that's hard,
Mm.
um, and sad, but there's so much in the work that you're doing that is hopeful, um, and that is bringing that hope to life. My favorite moment in the tour at the Museum of the Future is at the end, after you have a moment to meditate about what inspires you in the vision for the future, and then you go and you kind of put out your wish, and then all of the most widely shared dreams for the future are etched into stone.
Mhm.
When I have the chance to talk to you and learn from you and feel inspired by the leadership of your team at ALTÉRRA, it's one of those moments too, our hopes for the future brought to life. So I want to thank you so much for being a guest, and for being a friend. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you and the team and our community on making these visions a reality.
Well, likewise, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it's always good to chat with friends like yourself who share our vision and get excited about these issues. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Shukran.
Shukran. Thank you.